From the Whiskey 61 Lounge, it's Mississippi's only food sports show on the airwaves. We're the only World Food Championship host in the state. This is the Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds.
And you can watch the show on our Facebook page right now. Search the Out of Bounds Show, or YouTube, Out of Bounds Sports. Welcome in. Good morning. WRKS 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're also streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. And your SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland for all your collision repair. Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland. We've been taking our vehicles there for over 20 years. Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland. And we're also presented by Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. We want to welcome in Matt Wyatt. Played QB at MSU. MSU color analyst. Matt Wyatt Show, noon to 3 on 105.9 The Zone. Talk a little Mississippi State football, air raid, and Leach. It's been a tough go, to say the least. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Bo. Hope you're doing well, man. Good to talk to you.
Doing great. Thanks for your time. Let's jump right into it. Let's say that KJ Costello, continues to struggle maybe with concussion protocol, and Leach misses practice time and so on. Leach goes with Will Rogers. What are they playing for? I mean, what is realistic for this offense now that you got two freshman running backs, a freshman QB, Wally's playing, he's a true freshman wide receiver. There's some other young guys shuffling in and out. The O-line can't really figure out what they want to do or what they're asked to do. What is realistic for this offense in the air raid going forward this year?
Yeah, realistic, Bo. I think you're playing to just kind of get a little better incrementally. And, man, I know that makes fans kind of sick. And, media, you're like, oh, come on, it's like coach speak saying, let's get better, and let's just work on us. But it really is where they are. I mean, it's like baby steps time. That's what's going on there. And it's interesting how it works out that way. It is circumstantial. It's sort of existential too, that it feels like year zero, and I'm not saying that using the pandemic and a shortened season and all that as an excuse, no off season. They're not using it as an excuse, but I think you said reality. Well, I think it is reality. The reality coming out of the LSU win was that State's not as good as you thought, and LSU's a lot worse than you thought. And then these $1 million coordinators start chopping up your film. They start getting after you and breaking you down. And, a few guys leave, and you've got this complete and utter overhaul, really, of your whole program, but certainly on offense. And so you're just in a mode right now where, the change is setting in. And it ain't fun for sure, but everybody's, looking ahead. When's it going to click? When's it going to click? Well, it ain't going to happen within a week or two. I can promise you that. It might be a year or two before it really clicks. But I'll tell you this, Bo. Mike said something yesterday that when I heard him say it, I thought, yeah, he's right. I hadn't thought of it in those terms. And it was just in an answer to a question, but it was about playing these young guys. Because I commented during the broadcast, you noticed it. At one point, you look out there, and they went with two backs, two-back set. Well, your quarterback's a true freshman playing at Brandon last year. One of the backs is a true freshman playing at a high school in Atlanta last year, and the other back, Dylan Johnson, is playing at Greenville St. Joe last year, okay? And there they are against Alabama in prime time on ESPN. And you go, what in the world? You got no chance with all these young players, right, at certain positions. And what Mike said was, he said, well, one thing that works to your advantage, basically, I'm paraphrasing, he said, is that no matter the situation, whether you lose and getting your brains beat out or what, those guys are so excited to be out there. They just have the enthusiasm of they can't wait to get out there. And I thought, that's true. I remember that. At that age, you're coming out, kind of the score, the situation doesn't matter. Man, I'm in an SEC uniform in Bryant-Denny Stadium. So I don't think that for the majority of their team, they don't have a lack of enthusiasm, okay? What they have is a lack of experience and muscle and speed and know-how. They just lack everything right now. So they are in baby step mode, man. That's where they are.
I agree with you. This could take a while. I mean, next Labor Day, they will be better with Will Rogers and everybody you just referenced around him as a year older, but it could still even go into mid-season or maybe a little bit more as far as, getting it where he wants it.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. And the thing is, too, Bo, it's like none of us really know the answer. I have followed Mike, and I know you have too, for years because he's always been so entertaining from a distance, both with his offenses at Texas Tech and Washington State, some of his players, Kingsbury and B.J. Simmons and Gardner Minshew, but also his press conference. So we follow from a distance. But really only now am I going back and starting to learn more about how, frankly, like gut-wrenching it was in those first few years at both of those stops, both Texas Tech and Washington State. Like at Washington State, his first year there, they had 18 players that they ran off. I mean, it's just we're like halfway there, and so I'm like you. It's going to take a while, man, and we don't really know the answer. But nobody has a choice but to be patient, ride it out, because there's no change coming, and I'm not sure there needs to be. I don't know the answer to that. Somebody asked me yesterday. They said, "Is it eventually going to work?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I think it is. I don't know that, though. I can't guarantee it, but I think it is."
Sure.
Bo. So, and I know you're getting the same questions every day, but yeah, it's it is definitely going to be a long haul process. You know what I was thinking about too, Bo? And I wonder what your response to this would be, and if you think I'm just trying to sort of, in my mind, placate the situation. But I was thinking yesterday, how many players on State's offensive roster right now were recruited by any air raid offense coming out of high school?
0.
Well, and I got down to Will Rogers, and I thought, okay.
Oh, that's right. He had a Washington State offer. Yes. Yeah.
Right. He had a Washington State offer. But, man, that's basically it, isn't it? I mean, there's not a receiver. I mean, outside of the ones that they went and got in this first signing class, that was basically
Moreheads.
A lot of it was relationship holdovers from previous stuff, But basically, you don't have players who were not only have they not played in that system and know how to do it, they weren't even the types of players that air raid offenses were recruiting when they came out of high school. They weren't. I mean,
right.
So this is like it's total and complete rebuild. I mean, that's what it is.
Well, and Matt, you know this from playing quarterback, but also from following Mississippi State too. For over 100 years, this has been a run-oriented offense. Even with Dan, it was a power spread, or you may describe it a different way. And there's no question that Dan did some more things through the air that had never been done with Dak in 14 and 15. What they're trying to do, and you can, disagree with me or what, they're trying to build a prolific passing game because that's the way it's going at every level, high school, college, and the NFL, Matt.
Yeah. Well, and if we wanted to have a different conversation, Bo, we could get down that path of whether or not it's 10, 15 years too late.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, let's be honest. It'd have been pretty cool if you'd have hired away Mike Leach in about 2003.
Right.
That would have been something. But, all that water's under the bridge. I know, but anyway, you're not wanting to go down that path. Hindsight thing is 2020 for all of us, I guess. But, yeah, that's right. And, Bo, I think one way we worded it on our show one day was, look, if you're a State fan, I'm 43, about to be 44, and not a lifelong State fan, but now I'm as State as it gets. I came into the fold as an 18-year-old. Well, you've tried everything else. I mean, what's the goal here? What is the goal? Now, I know to a degree the goal is keep a solid foundation financially, keep your stadium sold, and, I get it. But also, man, you want to have some ups. And if you were to point, you mentioned Dan Mullen, if you were to point to one of the drawbacks during that time, it was, almost consistency to a fault, right? Like you beat the teams you're supposed to, but you almost never beat the teams you weren't supposed to.
Right.
You know, you never did beat Alabama. You never threw that punch. Meanwhile, Ole Miss racked up a couple of wins against them. And, yeah, they were a little more up and down. Auburn's a little more up and down. But at least they had the ups, right? And so I thought, okay, I'm okay with it at this point in my life. You know, you want to try the air raid and give Leach some time to see if he can make it happen. Yeah, I'm okay with it. You know, put the ball in the air. It's hard to watch right now. I know that. And I know that in most ways it can only get better. It can't get really any worse than some of the stuff you see now. But I'm okay with it. You tell me, hey, you might have to gut it out up there in the booth, Matt, or in your, you know, depending on who you are, in your seats in section whatever for a couple of years. But then that third year you're going to have something fun to watch. Okay, I'm all for it because, frankly, that's the one thing we hadn't tried.
Right. Matt Wyatt on the Out of Bounds show, the Matt Wyatt show. Noon to 3 on 105.9 The Zone. So Matt Blake believes that Leach will have to modify his offense. So did Tom Luganville early. I'm not convinced of that once he gets the personnel. I don't know yet, but I know I agree with you. Right now, his personnel doesn't even come close to fitting what he wants to do. So I know I asked you this last week, but when he gets offensive linemen, receivers, the running backs grow up, Will Rogers or Sawyer Robertson, whatever, how this all, you know, develops and matures, so to speak. Does he have to modify? He runs the true air raid, as you know. Graham Harrell at Southern Cal does not. Lincoln Riley does not. Kiff and Levy are running a version of what Art Briles took from Texas Tech, da-da-da-da. Does he have to modify? Once he gets his personnel in, does he still have to modify his air raid to execute in the SEC?
Yeah, I think so. And what I mean by it is you'll just add in a little more run, a little more run, a little more run as you get going because those opportunities because you'll be throwing it better. Does that make any sense at all?
Sure.
And it sounds like I'm oversimplifying it. So when I say modify, I mean, and then they'll have variations they can throw into it. So you say eventually modify. I agree with as long as we put eventually in front of it because what I see going on right now, and I think it's obvious to everybody because of the numbers are so low on offense against Arkansas, Kentucky, A&M, and Alabama, 4 games now. The numbers are so low and get worse each time that it shows you the offense right now is not in a situation where you can modify. What are you going to modify? You're not even running your base offense very well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's like there's a certain level of proficiency in your most basic stuff that you've got to reach before you can really get to a point of adding new stuff or tweaking stuff. I mean, you know, the most like if I were to make an example, this is not a specific to state, but like there are a lot of coaches, high school elsewhere, who've been through this, where you've got, you know, a certain package of pass plays that you're working on running every day in practice, and you would love to line the guys up in different formations and run that same play out of it because it'd confuse the defense. It looked like a different play. The problem is we're not even executing it consistently enough at the base to where we can add in new formations. We can't move this guy around. He doesn't even know how to run it where we line him up without moving him around. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I really believe that part of the thing that people are going, oh, it's so basic and, you know, they're running the same play every time. Well, you know why? They can't run other stuff. You know, when you're in practice trying to get to a point where you can smoothly, with one eye shut and an arm behind your back, run your base offense, that is a package of 7 to 8 plays. Until you get to a point where you can do that smoothly, what is the point in adding other stuff? All in the world that does is just make the water more muddy. And so they are at a point, right, this is a week-to-week, can we execute our stuff against a live opponent? If we can do it a little better and a little better, and maybe we get into an off-season next year and we get proficient enough at the base where we can now start as we say, modifying. And we're going to, when we go to a two-back set, we're going to have a run play that they haven't seen before on film, and they're just not there yet.
Matt Wyatt on the Out of Bounds show in the Parish Canebrake Brew guest line. Blake,
yeah,
you are in crazy man
Well,
mode.
I could talk with Matt and Tom and all these guys because, this is the inside football that I, nerd out on. So, Matt, I 100% agree, first off. That's so well put. Like you said, they can't do the basic stuff, so of course they can't evolve off of it. However, I guess my argument would be when you see what everyone else has done and when you just look at nature in general, nothing stays the same for 30 years and doesn't evolve, adapt, and become better to fit the current climate. When I look at Mississippi State and what Dan Mullen did, and you mentioned not getting Mike Leach 10, 15 years ago, Mullen, over 10 seasons, only twice threw the ball more than 50% of the time for the season. In fact, he had more seasons where they threw the ball 30% or in the 30s than they did in the 50s over his 10-year season. And he's, without doubt, the most prolific offensive coach Mississippi State's ever seen. So when you take that into consideration, when you take into the consideration that the last 3 seasons they threw the ball 36, 39, 39%, and now they're throwing it 77%. Kiffin runs it 40% of the time this year. That's second in the SEC. I don't think they have to get there, but is there a style of air raid offense?
Is there a number?
Are there variations of the air raid that you see currently being run in college or the NFL that Mike Leach needs to imitate at Mississippi State to have the most success?
See, here's what I would say is that it's less about, okay, this style, this type of offense, the spread offense, the triple option, pro style, and air raid. It's less dividing these systems up and more so these coaches you're naming, Blake. Look at it this way. Mullen is one of the best in college football at taking anybody at quarterback and figuring out what he can do, and then we just do that, right? Like the difference between Tyler Russell in 2012 versus Dak Prescott in 2014. It's like 2 different offenses. It's 2 different playbooks. I mean, the calls and the numbers and the percentages are just totally different. Why? Based on who he's playing. You see what I mean? I think Kiffin is some of that. Look what Kiffin did with Blake Sims, a converted running back at Alabama in 2014. We forget that Kiffin coached a converted running back who was 5'11" to be at the time until Tua Tagovailoa came along, was the all-time single-season passing leader at the University of Alabama. And after his college career, didn't even get so much as a sniff from pro football to be a quarterback anywhere. That's what Kiffin did with him. So those guys they'll say, you just give me anybody, and we'll get him to play winning football. We'll coach an offense around him. But listen, Mike Leach has never done that, ever, at any stop. Didn't do it when he was coaching offense at Kentucky. He didn't do it when he was at Texas Tech or Washington State. And when you hire Mike Leach, you know that. You know exactly what you're getting. Tells you on the front end what you're getting. And that is, we're going to run this offense this way. This is how I coach it. It's what I do. Now, if you don't want to do that, don't hire me.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do it, hire me. And it may not be pretty at first. We may run some off. And week 5, I'll tell people in the press conference, if this bothers you, you better buckle up because there's going to be more of it. I mean, when is the last time an SEC coach said that out loud? But he just said it because he made no bones about it.
Because he's got the chips, Matt.
He does. And, Blake, what I would tell you is there is an element here of if Mike Leach steps out here against Vanderbilt and goes 50% run, 50% pass, and runs, like zone read stuff, with maybe a direct snap, wildcat. If he does that, I would go back to, the agreement and the decision-making and go, well, why in the world are we doing this? Well, we're doing it to score points against Vanderbilt. Yeah, but you're not going to be running that stuff 3 years from now. 3 years from now, we hired you to run the air raid. You're in a situation right now where everything we're seeing on the field right now, I hate to say it, but it's just not about 2020.
Yep.
It's just not what it's about. I don't think Mike Leach can come out and say it out loud. I think in his head, stuff they're doing right now, it just ain't about 2020. It's about 22, maybe 23. I think that's what it's pointing towards.
Matt Wyatt on the Out of Bounds show. I know it's early, and we just went over he doesn't have the right personnel around him. But do you think Will Rogers is capable of running this offense?
Yeah, I really do. I really do think he's capable. And, you know, with the way they are going to recruit quarterbacks, it'll be like an every year competition, Bo, where he's going to have to, you know, a guy like Will's probably going to have to win that job over and over and over again during the course of his career, including next year. But I really like him. And, you know, one thing I noticed about him, his feet are quick. He has light feet. He has, you know, he's a quick twitch athlete. It's such an obvious difference, his athleticism versus KJ, you know, when they're in there. So he's a little better runner, quicker to get out of the pocket. He's a little bit quicker decision maker as a true freshman. I've said this from the first practice I went to. He has the best mechanics, throwing mechanics consistently to anybody out there, and they really help him. So can he do it? Yes. He can run it. He's a guy who can do everything you want to do. And here he is as a true freshman going ahead and getting his feet wet. And if you're a State fan, you just hope that benefits you down the road.
Matt, I've got a minute, 2 minutes here.
Okay.
Zach Arnett may have to, even though Vandy's not good, Zach Arnett and that defense may have to win the game for them Saturday afternoon. Your thoughts? Yeah,
and, you know, Bo, I don't do the gambling thing. I don't know very much about it, but I know what point spreads are. And what they put 16.5.
Yeah.
I think on State, and I looked at it and go, well, I mean, if you've watched State's offense, there aren't a whole lot of people who have a ton of confidence that they, against any live opponent on the other side, is going to execute well enough to score more than 2 touchdowns, right? So I'm thinking, it pretty much telling me that a lot of folks believe that Zach Arnett's defense is going to shut Vandy out.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it looks like. And State's defense really playing well. That guy, I mean, I know it's an easy point to bring up, Bo, but I just think one of the bigger challenges you're going to have over the next 12 to 18 months is making sure you make sure that Zach Arnett remains a Bulldog, because he's going to be a hot name out there for sure.
No doubt. We'll leave it there.
Okay.
Well, one more, 30 seconds. Who's the MVP on defense for you?
Oh, boy. Great question. I probably would say Martin Emerson.
Okay.
He's been good in everything he does. He's a future NFL player, and teams just completely stay away from it. I think he's really good.
Bam. Matt, thank you, man.
Yep, appreciate it.
Matt Wyatt Show, noon to 3. 12 to 3, 105.9 The Zone. MSU color analyst joining us on the Parrish Cane Break Brew guest line. Hey, the show is brought to you by Independent Roofing, the #1 commercial roofing company in Mississippi and the Southeast. You're talking about the Beau Rivage. You're talking about Nissan. You're talking about the Golden Moon Casino. Independent Roofing, the #1 commercial roofing company in Mississippi. That's Independent Roofing. Go to their website, roofing.ms. That's pretty easy. Roofing.ms. We'll see you tomorrow.